Good evening and welcome to the last installment of Speaking of Sports with Steve Kallas for the year 2020. I'm Janelle Albritton, the publisher of Westchester County Post, and I thought it would be nice to read this piece that Steve worked so hard to research and write a few years ago. We posted it on the website last year, but I thought for this year we would take turns reading this wonderful piece that he did to explain why Roberto Clemente deserves a lot more love as a hitter in the world of baseball than he gets. Yes, he got love for his humanitarian work and his big heart, and he was just a really nice guy, and he was well known and loved for that. But we're going to focus more on his career as an amazing batter in American baseball. I hope you enjoy it. So take it away, Steve.
Today, we live in a world where many people never saw players like Roberto Clemente or Sandy Koufax or Mickey Mantle actually play baseball. So now, Koufax was overrated, as one alleged expert has said. Of course, that's preposterous. Or Mickey Mantle only hit 298 lifetime, so how good could he have been? One of the greatest players ever. That's how good he could have been. In the case of Roberto Clemente, he didn't have power, so he can't be an all-time great. Well, one needs only to look at the facts to hopefully understand the greatness of Clemente. Surviving film clips should be reviewed as well to learn about Clemente, considered by a few contemporaries to be one of the greatest, if not the greatest, players of all time. Yet he is considered by some modern day experts to be not worthy of even a mention in that group.
As many of you know, the anniversary of the death of the great Roberto Clemente is on December 31. In 1972, he was flying in a rescue mission to help the victims and survivors of an earthquake in Nicaragua when his plane went down. His body was never found. Much has been correctly written about Clemente as an incredible humanitarian who cared deeply for other people. This is necessary and fantastic to keep his legacy going. His passion, his selflessness, and his willingness to do it himself all should be celebrated. This article, however, focuses on Clemente the ball player, specifically about the bad rap that he has received as a hitter who did not have enough power to be considered as one of the greatest players to ever play the game.
Whenever people talk about the great talents of Roberto Clemente, Hall of Famer, they often come to what has been viewed as his major weakness as a ball player, the thing that kept him from being considered as one of the greatest of all time. Clemente really didn't have power, they say. He only hit 240 home runs. How can he be considered as one of the all time greats if he didn't hit a lot of homers? Well, a review of what some of his contemporaries thought, as well as a review of the field, Forbes Field, he played in for most of his career, will show that Clemente really did have excellent power and should not be left out of the all time greats conversation. This all started a number of years ago when Hall of Famer Duke Snider of the Brooklyn Dodgers, 407 home runs, was on WFAN radio in New York City being interviewed by the famous duo of Mike and the Mad Dog, Mike Francesa and Chris Russo. Snider was on talking about many greats, including Clemente. Clemente has always been considered a great player, except for that one fact: he didn't have power. During the interview, one of the co-hosts said that virtually what everybody had repeated through the years, that he didn't have power, that he had only hit 240 homers. Snyder interrupted the interviewer's mid-sentence and said, with surprise in his voice, Clemente had power. He played in an airport.
That statement, he played in an airport, was surprising to Steve Kallas that day. And also, it surprised others who were very well aware that Hall of Famer Ralph Kiner, a Pittsburgh Pirate great from 1946 to 1953, was right before Clemente, of 1955 to 1972. Now, Ralph Kiner had led the National League in home runs for 7 consecutive years. How could Kiner, a prolific home run hitter, have done so well at Forbes Field, while Clemente only managed to hit a total of 240 home runs in his entire career, which included many games at Forbes Field?
Well, here's the answer to that question. In 1947, the Pirates talked legendary player Hank Greenberg into coming to Pittsburgh to play for the Pirates. According to various reports, in order to sweeten the deal for Greenberg, the Pirates decided to move the bullpens to left field. Forbes Field, a massive ballpark, first used by the Pirates in 1909, was 365 feet down the left field line, 406 in left center, going out to 457 feet in deep left center. Prior to the 1947 season at Forbes Field, according to baseballstatistics.com, Forbes Field had a double bullpen 30 feet wide by 200 feet long, was to be placed behind the left field wall. It significantly cut the distance in left field, reducing the left field foul line from 365 feet down to 335, the left center field power alley from 406 to 355 feet. In Green Cathedrals by Philip Lowry, a book about baseball ballparks, the dimensions of Forbes Field are listed as follows. Left field, 365 in the year 1930, moved down to 335 in 1947, moved back up to 365 in 1954. Left center field dimensions, 406 in 1942, reduced to 355 in 1947 when Hank Greenberg was going there, then put back to 406 in 1954. The New York Times, in its April 19th, 1947 edition, described the new Greenberg Gardens, as it was called for Hank Greenberg, as a tailor-made home run area in left field. The Gardens are an enclosed bullpen, which shortens the 365-foot distance to the left field wall at the foul line by 30 feet. Well, that should answer a few questions. The Gardens, renamed Kiner's Corner by some after Hank Greenberg retired after his one season there, and that might be the forerunner, as many of you know, to Ralph Kiner's post-game New York Mets show in later decades, also called Kiner's Corner. Since Greenberg retired after the 47 season, it became Kiner's Corner. It stood at Forbes Field until Kiner was traded in a dispute with general manager Branch Rickey. And yes, that Branch Rickey, who was with the Dodgers, who signed Jackie Robinson, he moved to the Pirates. And then Kiner had a dispute with Branch Rickey and was traded during the 1953 season. According again to the New York Times, Branch Rickey tried to immediately take down the bullpen and the shorter fence, but the National League ordered Rickey to leave it up until the end of the 53 season, when it was removed.
The old gigantic pre 1947 dimensions of Forbes Field were restored after the 1954 season. Now, to have an understanding of how massive Forbes Field was, they stored the batting cage in the left center field on the field during the game. So Roberto Clemente was a rookie for the Pittsburgh Pirates 1 year later in 1955. Now, some of you know the crazy rule that existed in the 1950s. If you signed a player for more than $5,000, if that player was not put on the major league roster for that season, he could then be drafted after a year in the minors in the Rule 5 draft. According to the excellent Clemente biography by David Marinis, this is exactly what happened to Roberto Clemente.
After a glowing report from Dodgers super scout Al Campanis, interestingly, he gave Clemente an A+ for power. Clemente was originally signed by the Brooklyn Dodgers to keep him away from the New York Giants so they wouldn't have Willie Mays and Roberto Clemente in the outfield. His bonus and contract made him someone who would have to be in the majors or subject to that draft at the end of the year. The Dodgers did the same thing a year later with a young pitcher named Sandy Koufax, but the Dodgers kept him on the major league team in 1955. The Dodgers tried to hide Clemente in the minor leagues in 1954, but many knew of his great talents. So while Koufax was protected, that is, he would always stay with the Dodgers, Clemente had a 1-year minor league career. Only 87 games, only 148 at bats, only a 257 batting average. The attempt to hide Clemente did not work, and the Pirates took him with the first pick of the Rule 5 draft.
So Roberto Clemente showed up at the airport, Forbes Field, in 1955. He was very young, 20 years old. He was very inexperienced with only 148 minor league at bats. And he was very out of place in Pittsburgh. Below is a discussion of some of the power he showed and what some of his contemporaries thought of him from a power perspective. Rogers Hornsby was a coach for the Chicago Cubs in 1959. He was a Hall of Famer, and he witnessed Clemente hitting a home run out of Wrigley Field center field on May 17, 1959. The ball landed on Waveland Avenue, a full 500 feet away from home base. Hornsby said it was one of the longest home runs he had ever seen in his 45 years in baseball.
Here are two Sandy Koufax stories about the power of Roberto Clemente. In the excellent Clemente biography by Cal Wagenheim, Koufax said that the longest ball ever hit off him to the opposite field was, quote, hit off me by Clemente at the Los Angeles Coliseum in 1961. It was a fastball on the outside corner, and he drove it out of the park. Not over the fence, but he knocked it way out of the park. Koufax went on to say that Clemente could hit a pitch out for a home run. The second story, on May 31st, 1964 at Forbes Field, Clemente hit a home run off Koufax 30 feet high off the light tower in center field. Koufax said he couldn't recall anyone hitting one longer off of him. Johnny Pesky, the Red Sox legend. Many don't know that Johnny Pesky, the face of the Red Sox, was a coach for manager Harry Walker of the Pirates for 3 years when Clemente played in Pittsburgh. Two Pesky stories. The Wagenheim bio talks of the day, May 15th, 1967, when Clemente hit 3 home runs and a double against Cincinnati, driving in all 7 runs in an 8-7 loss. Pesky, who played with the great Ted Williams, said he had never seen such a fearful display of power in one game. The second Pesky story, according to the Mariners bio, Pesky told writer Len Biederman of the Pittsburgh Press that the only hitter he had ever seen get solid wood on the ball time after time, as much as Clemente was Pesky's friend, Ted Williams, considered by many to be the greatest hitter who ever lived.
Harry Walker was the Pirates manager in 1966. Before the season started, he went to Clemente and told him, according to the Wagenheim bio, Roberto, I wish this year you would go for power. Hit 25 homers and get 115 RBIs. We will need that to win the pennant. So Clemente went on to hit 29 home runs, 119 RBIs, and he himself scored 105 runs. This performance remains the 3rd highest home run total for a right-handed hitter in the 61-year history of Forbes Field. This was Clemente's regular season MVP in 1966.
To compare Clemente and Stargell and Ralph Kiner, it's very hard to compare, but understand a few things about this trio. Clemente only averaged about 5 to 6 home runs a year at Forbes Field, playing half the year in Forbes Field. He played there for 15 and a half seasons. Willie Stargell, Willie Stargell, power hitter, only averaged about 10 home runs a year at Forbes Field in the 7.5 seasons he played there. Yes, Stargell was a lefty, and it was just about equally hard to hit home runs for lefties, although the deepest part of the park was 457 feet to left center field. The Kiner comparisons are fascinating. Kiner played 1 year, his first, at Forbes Field when it was an airport. That's the year before Greenberg came to Pittsburgh. In that first year, with those old massive dimensions, Kiner hit 23 home runs. Then, with the advent of Greenberg Gardens, everything in left field through left center field came in significantly. Kiner hit in consecutive seasons 51 homers, 40, 54, 47, 42, and 37 in the next 6 seasons. Kiner, in fact, often credited his mentor, Hank Greenberg, with teaching him how to pull the ball, making him especially deadly with Greenberg Gardens in left to left center field at Forbes Field. This is not to detract at all from Ralph Kiner in any way. In fact, his 23 home runs in his rookie year in 1946 with the long dimensions led the National League. But Kiner, according to the Baseball Biography Project, only hit 8 home runs of his 23 at Forbes Field in 1946. In 1947, with the advent of Greenberg Gardens, he hit 28 of his 51 homers at Forbes Field. Obviously, you can see the difference. In his one season playing his home games in the old Forbes Field, he hit 23. In the next 6 seasons, playing his home games with the much shorter left to left center field fence, Kiner averaged over 45 home runs a season. Give that a little thought when you think about Roberto Clemente playing with the much longer dimensions. I'm going to talk briefly now about the all-time leading hitters of home runs at Forbes Field. Without question, this is a bit of a misleading stat, but it's presented to show the futility of trying to hit home runs at Forbes Field. The all-time list at Forbes Field, according to baseballstatistics.com, is, of course, number 1, Ralph Kiner, 175. Number 2, Roberto Clemente with 85 homers. Number 3, Willie Stargell with 74. Number 4, Frank Thomas, obviously the old Pirate and later Met player, not the more modern day Frank Thomas, the slugger for the White Sox. Number 5, Frank Thomas with 64, and number 5, Wally Westlake with 62. That's the all-time record for a ballpark that was open for 61 years. Obviously, Clemente is high on the list because he played many years there, but the point here is that nobody could hit a lot of home runs in Forbes Field, again, except during the Greenberg Garden years.
So, some fascinating facts of Forbes Fields. In the 61-year history of Forbes Field, 0 no-hitters were pitched. Very few homers outside of the Greenberg Garden years were hit. And there's a quote from legendary Pirate Pie Trainer, who spoke about the challenge Forbes Field presented to batters. New York Times sports columnist Dave Anderson interviewed Trainer on July 11, 1970, just before the closing of Forbes Field. Trainer said that the reason for the 0 no-hitters pitched at Forbes Field was that it's a triple ballpark, not a homer ballpark. Hitters shorten their swings there. Fascinating stuff. On more than one occasion, Clemente told sports writers about the absurdity of trying to hit home runs in Forbes Field. In 1964, for example, Clemente told a sports writer that as long as I'm in Forbes Field, I can't go for home runs. Line drives, yes. Indeed, Clemente hit 166 triples in his career, playing home games for 15 and a half seasons in a triple park. Who knows how many of them would have been a home run in a normal park or in Greenberg Gardens. Interestingly, to almost prove Trainer's point, two no hitters were thrown in the Pirates' new stadium, the Three Rivers Stadium, in the first 7 seasons there. So Pie Trainer had a point.
To try and make some determination of how possibly many home runs Roberto Clemente could have hit, I took a look at his entire 1967 Forbes Field home at bats to see, for example, how many triples he hit to left center or left field, or how many long fly balls, sacrifice fly balls. So I went to baseballreference.com where you can look up every at bat that he, virtually any player you want, but I could look up all of his at bats for the 1967 season. The goal was to try to get a feel for how many more home runs he might have hit. In 1967 home games in Forbes Field with the long dimensions, Clemente hit approximately 18 to 20 fly balls that were flyouts to left or center, including sacrifice flies, which generally are deeper, or extra base hits to the outfield, to the left center or left field, mainly triples. There were 8 home games for which actual at-bats were not available, so I couldn't look at those games. Is this an exercise in futility? Not really, because it just makes the additional point that Clemente had power that didn't show up in his home run totals because of where he played in the 1950s and the 1960s.
Clemente didn't hit more than 6 home runs against any individual pitcher, but the two pitchers that he did hit 6 home runs off of, Sandy Koufax and Ferguson Jenkins, are two Hall of Fame pitchers. Interestingly, Clemente hit 6 home runs off Koufax in only 107 at bats. He hit 6 off Jenkins in only 94 at bats. Both work out to 30 plus homer seasons with about 500 or so at bats.
In the 1971 World Series, this would be the series where Roberto Clemente really shined. He was incredible. He finally got the national attention he deserved. The Baltimore Orioles were big favorites to beat the Pirates, but they didn't really know how to pitch to Clemente, not that anyone else did. Clemente stood far away from home plate, right-handed hitter, and he would often be pitched away under the theory that he couldn't reach the outside pitch. Of course, he had excellent power the other way, and many of his blasts were to right and right center field. But National Leaguers knew it was a waste of time to pitch him inside. Clemente himself once said, "Pitch me inside, and I'll hit the ball all the way to bleeping McKeesport." In the 71 World Series, Clemente's finally national recognition MVP World Series, according to the Mariners bio, the Orioles had decided to pitch Clemente inside. This was contrary to Gene Mauch's, the well-known Phillies manager's, Clemente rule. Don't pitch him inside, he'll kill you. This led to his 414 1971 World Series batting average.
In Game 6, Hall of Fame pitcher Jim Palmer came inside to Clemente in the first inning. He hit a triple down the left field line. In the third inning, Palmer pitched Clemente away. He hit a home run to right field. With the game tied at 2 in the 10th inning, Dave Cash singled but then stole second, allowing the Orioles to walk Clemente intentionally. The Orioles would win 3-2, forcing a Game 7.
Orioles ace Mike Cuellar started Game 7 for the Orioles. Longtime rivals, Clemente turned on an inside pitch and hit it 390 feet over the left field wall after Cuellar had retired his first 11 Pirates he had faced in the pivotal Game 7. The run turned out to be the difference as the Pirates won Game 7 2-1 and the World Series. Clemente had at least one hit in every game and had 2 doubles, a triple, and 2 home runs in the 7-game series. The rest of this is a compilation of Clemente moonshots where he showed incredible power. It's by all means not inclusive, not totally inclusive, but Here's a list of other Clemente notable smashes. In 1955, according to the Wagenheim bio, Clemente hit a Warren Spahn pitch over the scoreboard in left field at Forbes Field. The New York Times on February 11th, 1954, explained in advance what a shot this would have to be when, discussing the tearing down of Green Gardens, the Times wrote, more important, however, is that instead of clearing a 12 feet screen to land in homer territory, the hitter will now have to power his drive over the left field scoreboard, which rises 25 feet 6 inches. A few days after the Spahn homer, Clemente hit a 430-foot triple off of Johnny Antonelli. On September 8th, 1958, Clemente tied a National League record by hitting 3 triples in one game.
Early in the 1960 season, Clemente went 3 for 3 against Cincinnati, with 2 doubles, a single, and, according to the Mariners bio, a long sacrifice fly that would have been a home run in any other park, but was hauled in by Veda Pinson near where the batting cage was stored at the 457-foot sign in deepest left center.
On May 6, 1960, at San Francisco's Candlestick Park, Clemente hit a ball pitched by Sam Jones into a terrific wind. According to the Wagenheim bio, the shocked fans and players saw the home run ball land 450 feet away as Roberto calmly trotted around the bases. According to Tales of the Tape, despite the wind, the ball carried into the remote bleacher area beyond the left field fence. Clemente and Ernie Banks are the only 2 visiting players to reach that remote area of the park, along with 2 Giant players. In June of 1966, according to the Wagenham bio, during an 11-game homestand, Clemente hit 444 with 28 hits and 6 home runs. 2 of the home runs were to deep right center field in Forbes Field, landing between the Barney Dreyfuss Monument and the light tower close to the 436-foot marker. During that homestand, according to Tales of the Tape, one of those home runs, hit off the Cardinals' Al Jackson, was hit so far that Cardinals outfielder Curt Flood said, "I just didn't think that anyone could hit a ball that far."
On September 6, 1966, Clemente got his 2,000th hit off Hall of Famer Ferguson Jenkins, a mammoth blast into the upper right field deck at Forbes Field.
So, in conclusion, what does this all mean? This is in no way to say that Clemente had the power of a Mantle or a Mays or an Aaron. Even Clemente admitted that wasn't true. But it is to say that Clemente had excellent power. And if he had played somewhere else or during the time of Greenberg Gardens at Forbes Field, his home run totals would have been much higher. As Cal Wagenheim astutely noted in his Clemente bio, many a home run in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, Cincinnati, or Philadelphia would have fallen innocuously into the left fielder's glove at Forbes Field. Nor could you compare Clemente's power to that of the great Joe DiMaggio, who hit 361 home runs while playing in his own airport at the old Yankee Stadium.
But Clemente had his moments, and many of them where he showed what he could do. He understood early on that it was pure folly to try and hit home runs at Forbes Field. He stood far away from the plate, so most people pitched him away. He had stunning opposite field power for his time, or any other time for that matter. He played mostly in the pre 1969 high mound pitchers era. He came to the majors before he was ready. He was thrown into the deep end of the pool, and he survived. And then he thrived. The Mariners bio lays out well the many injuries that Clemente had played with throughout his career. Despite all those injuries, he wound up passing the great Honus Wagner for the most games played by a Pittsburgh Pirate.
To sum up, any conversation about the greatest players ever is simply incomplete and misguided without the great Roberto Clemente's name in the conversation. He may not be a top five player of all time, but once you go to the bottom of the top 10, and certainly when you go to the top 15 or 20, Clemente's name is in the mix and should be on the list. Remember, he played in an airport. Thank you, Duke Snyder.
This concludes the piece on Roberto Clemente as we remember him on this day, the day before his death on December 31, 1972. We wish you a happy new year and we look forward to posting more videos for you. Take care, stay healthy, and remember that we appreciate you and we love you.